everyone! Today we're here with Anemone, who is a healer, a pain therapist, a yin yoga and meditation teacher. And she is also the person who's been guiding me on my own spiritual journey. And she's a really good friend of mine. And we actually met in China where we were training in a temple, Kung Fu, Tai Chi, Qigong, Taoist medicine, like 7 hours a day. It was crazy. And before that, well, she had to deal with a lot of chronic pain. And it took a while, but you found a way to recover from that. So this is what we're going to talk about today. So when did you start having your first symptoms of this chronic pain? And what kind of symptoms did you have?
First off, thank you for that beautiful introduction. I had chronic pain since I was 13, and it actually started with something really weird. I was in a playground, and sometimes as a kid you crawl up and you jump down from something.
Mm-hmm.
And I was crawling up this building and jumped down and I hurt my foot. And I started to have like this pain in my foot, and it wouldn't go away.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing was wrong in the foot. And then after that I started to have a lot of pain in my back. And me and my mom, we would go to see a lot of doctors because I had so much pain and I felt I couldn't really move my spine. I couldn't, have a straight spine.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to walk weird. Like everyone was saying that I was walking different than I did before. And then they took a lot of pictures of my spine, and so we went to a radiologist and they took an x-ray of my spine to see if there was something wrong. And it showed that I had Scheuermann's, which is very normal for teenagers. This means that the spine, it grows together and the vertebrae, they start to move forward. So that's why I felt I couldn't move my spine really.
Yeah.
And then the doctor, I feel I was very lucky actually with this doctor. He told me to find some sport to do. They didn't start to operate on me or to... Sometimes they try to stretch your body, and you have to do all these kind of things. But he actually just told me to exercise. And at the time I was doing a lot of dancing. But he told me to find something where it was more like for the upper body, so rowing or kayaking. And so I tried both, and I love to kayak. I don't know why, but there was just something about it to look in the horizon, just the water and you had this paddle and you could just go. You have nothing there other than you and nature.
Mm-hmm.
Like no phone, no people, like maybe others kayaking, but you're in your own boat. I don't know, I really like that. And I don't think that he wanted me to do it as much as I did.
Why did you do it so much?
So our trainer in the place where I was doing kayaking, I grew up in this small town.
Yeah.
There was not much to do. And our trainer, he was elite sports trainer, and he had been in the Olympics himself, and also his son had, and a lot of the people he had trained has been in the Olympics. So he was quite focused on getting us to a high level of training.
Mm-hmm.
From the beginning of our life. So I started training, I think 4 or 5 times a week when I was just 13.
Wow, that's amazing. And how did you deal with it? Didn't your pain stop you from being effective in the sport?
Actually, what I found out was that because my spine was like this, like a little bit forward, I could actually use it as a benefit in kayaking because I could take a longer row, a longer row than my other friends.
Oh wow!
So I had a different technique because my spine was a little bit forwarded, and I would have pain, but it would be there after training, and sometimes it would be there in the beginning before I was warmed up. but I actually felt that it was helpful for me to do the training, and maybe it also helped me to focus on something else.
Oh, that's important. Because the mind sometimes can do so much more, and you've explained to me already in the past that the pain actually comes from your brain.
Yeah.
So maybe distracting it made it like dissociate from the pain.
For sure. Looking back at it now, I'm sure that because it gave me a positive thing to do in my life, that's also why it helped so much to do the kayaking.
Mm-hmm.
And also it gave me friends who became like family at some point, because you use so much time together on the water.
Mm-hmm.
And you use all your weekends together. We went around Europe in this little bus to do kayaking different places in competitions.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you become like a small family.
Mm-hmm.
So it gave you something else to focus on. That was very good.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And so how did your journey continue? So you did this for several years.
Yeah.
And then you still had chronic pain.
Mm-hmm.
How did you finally get on the journey to heal it completely?
Yeah, so the pain got worse and worse, especially after, so I went through some traumas in my life. I lost a boyfriend when I was just 17.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point I stopped with a lot of things in my life. Among that was kayaking. And later on I lost my father just 2 years after.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and those traumas actually, when I look back at it now, I see that they were very connected with that the pain was getting worse.
Yeah, of course, of course.
So at that time I was very stressed and I started to have more and more pain. At one point I couldn't move at all, like I would just be in bed and my knees would be huge, also my feet. Sometimes my joints, they would like dislocate,
Mm-hmm.
like they would not work, my joints in the fingers and the toes.
Yeah.
So I would just like have days where just getting up was a big deal. I would not be able to do normal things like shower and clean and make food.
Wow.
I would have my boyfriend help me, or I would just do it when the energy was there.
Mm-hmm.
And I would be crying a lot because I didn't know what was wrong. I was very scared. So I went through like this whole phase of finding out what was wrong with me.
Mm-hmm.
At the time I was an occupational therapist student, so I was studying to become a therapist. And I used so much of my energy just to find out what's wrong in my body. Like read about all kinds of diseases, and I went to see a lot of specialists. And then I found a course in what is pain.
Yeah.
And it was like a course about all the neurology from the brain and also the body. And I started to understand that actually it was my body that was trying to tell me something and my brain trying to tell me something. And then after I was a therapist, I still had pain. I found a course in explained pain therapy. And explained pain therapy was the thing that really healed me. Because it gave me the complete knowledge about how the brain works when it comes to pain.
Mm-hmm.
An important part of the story is also yoga. Because at the time I was not able to really move.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a family member who told me, "Oh, I heard that stretching should be very good. Like maybe you should try yoga." And it's actually quite an important part of the story because I had been doing sport on a high level since I was 13.
Yeah.
So I was very against stuff that was alternative, like especially stuff to do with vitamins and
wow.
And
You've
yoga.
come a long way, because I know how you are now, and you're absolutely in this world. So I think you must have had like a huge switch mentally at one point that had to. I mean, what event made it that you switched so much?
I don't know if it was one event. I think it came very slowly.
Okay.
The more, so I went to yoga to try it out, and I was very resistant. But I thought, okay, I'm just gonna try it, and if it's really bad, I can always do some weightlifting after to feel, normal.
Yeah. Actually, I'm very curious about your first experience because I remember my first experience with yoga. It wasn't that great, honestly. It was. I expected to be much more like spiritual, more working on the breath work, more relaxing, and maybe work a little bit on the internal energy with the chakras. And my first experience was actually very, it felt like a sport, like a high intensity sport where we're just moving from one movement to the other. And I was like, I can't even focus on my breath here. I was hyperventilating. We were moving so fast between the movements, and it was really not my thing. So afterwards I got to try more yin types of yoga and more relaxing types, and that was much more my thing. So I was curious, how did your first experience happen?
It sounds like you went to like a fitness vinyasa class or something like this.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Well, so my first experience was in a fitness center where I was already going to train because I was trying to heal myself with training, and I was going to school. So I just went to the same fitness center, and there was this old woman. I think she was like 70 years old, and I thought like, oh no, what is this, And all the people there were, they looked like just normal fitness people. So I thought, okay, I just go in the back, and I had never been stretching a lot, only when I had pain. I couldn't do half the movements like at all. And I would just be looking at this woman that was 70 years old who could completely fold over and touch the floor. I had never been able to touch the floor folding over.
Yeah.
And she told me to do that, and I thought like, can normal people do this? I don't understand. How can they do that? And I could see all the other people, they were able to do it. And I start to understand it's not only about training, it's more about moving my body. And I just tried it, and I thought it was so impressive to see. Like, I remember so clearly in the end of the class, she would stand on her head and still talk. And she would be able to look at us and guide us as she was standing on her head. And I was just sitting there like, what is going on? But then, after the class, she had us all take a cushion and then sit down and close our eyes. And I remember I was shocked because I saw a light in my forehead, like a yellow light. And I was so shocked. I did not know what it was, but it felt very good. And when I came back, I remember I was sitting on my couch and I felt better. I was more relaxed. And I decided I would go every Saturday to this class.
Wow, so it was a huge transformation for you, going just to one class. You were committed afterwards.
Yeah, and it wasn't because I was open to yoga or something like that. I couldn't not go because I felt better.
Of course. Yeah.
And it was the first time in a long time that I felt better. At this time I was so sick that I couldn't move most of the days. I had to take buses to school where before I would have bicycled. In Denmark we don't have mountains, so everything's really flat, so bicycling is not a big deal. But at this time just walking was huge for me. Just carrying books in my backpack was difficult because my knees would feel like they would collapse. So to be able to feel better gave me something like hope.
Of course.
And I think that's what made me more and more open to the possibility that I could get better, but that it wasn't from any medicine or operations, but it was more from, I guess today you would call it healing, but I would never in the past have used this kind of word.
Yeah.
I think it was just like recovery I would have called it at that time. Anyway, I started doing yoga every Saturday. Even if I had like social plans or something, I would come after yoga. At the time, I didn't have a lot. I would go out with friends, but it was difficult to go out because it would take energy, and then I would have a whole day where I couldn't do anything. And at one point in the fitness center, they started having hot yoga. I don't know if you've tried that.
No, I have not.
You've heard about it, yeah?
But yeah, of course, yeah, I know how it goes. I just kind of felt like that would be hardcore.
Yeah, because in hot yoga it's actually kind of like you described. It's quite fast. And you're in a room. It's between 37 and 42 degrees. But as I told you, the first time I went to yoga, I couldn't reach the floor. So most of the poses in yoga, especially traditional hatha yoga, it requires you to be flexible. I was not flexible. I was very strong, but I was not flexible. So what happened was that they started having hot yoga in the fitness center, and I thought, okay, I could try that because maybe in the heat I will be able to actually do this movement. And so I went one Saturday to another kind of yoga class, and here I met my first teacher. Her name is May, and she is a power yoga teacher. So it was like that, like you described, you go really fast, but then at one point you stop and you go very deep into stretching. That was the first time for me where I could move this part of my spine. I had not, since I was 13,
wow.
I felt like it was growing this way, right?
Yeah.
But after that hot yoga class, I felt a crack.
Wow.
That I could move all of a sudden this part of my spine.
That's really amazing. And how old were you around that time?
Oh yeah, I was probably 19, 20.
Oh, wow, so you went all those years with just feeling your back, just going forward, and you were losing control over your body in a way.
Yeah.
And this permitted you to take back that power. And that's actually quite impressive. So, did you continue with these courses afterwards?
Yeah, I became addicted completely. I want to go back all the time to this class. And the thing that happened was that in hot yoga, because you sweat so much and you stretch, you detox. And that detox made me different in my head also. All of a sudden I would walk out and I would only want to have a green juice. Or I would just want to have carrots. And I lost the interest in eating sugar, meat, fatty stuff. I didn't want it.
Wow.
But if I saw a carrot, I would be like, yes, give me. And I would like be really focused on what kind of vegetables I needed. And it didn't come from thinking. It come from my body telling me, like this kind of, we call it intuition, right? I think this, so it wasn't like one event that changed me. It was like gradually, slowly changing step by step my whole awareness about what I had been eating, how I had been acting.
It really started with this yoga here. That's amazing. It helped you not only heal yourself physically, but also get better communication with your body, which is super important to know what it needs. And in our society, we really have a tendency of not listening to it. We're always wanting to follow the new trend, the what's in fashion right now. And if this star is doing this, everyone wants to do it. And the thing is that each body is different. We all have different needs. We metabolize differently. We absorb certain nutrients differently. We have food intolerances. And so it's interesting to know that this permitted you to listen better to what your body actually wanted.
That's actually really interesting because I haven't thought about it like that. What I felt, it was just like the health that everyone is talking about, you have to do all that. For me, it never came from there, from advice. It came from inside out. And it's like, because it came from there, I couldn't resist it.
Yeah.
It was because it came from myself. So it wasn't like I didn't have this negative pattern of thinking like, oh, it's too bad I didn't eat this healthy thing or something. I didn't walk around being afraid of food or something like that. So that was a big change for me. And another thing that I also had a big problem was with my intestine, actually.
Yeah.
So I had chronic inflammation in my intestines for as long as I can remember. And when you have that problem, you can sometimes not really feel what's going on, because it's just always annoyed. You always feel annoyed in that area of your body. So I guess that it was also detox at this level of like organ part of my body.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing that happened was that this yoga teacher, that I loved her classes so much, but then at some point she stopped teaching in a fitness center and she started teaching in a real yoga center.
Yeah.
And I had always been training, okay? I had always been like running and weightlifting and pushing myself. So when she stopped, I had to make a choice. Because I tried other yoga classes and it wasn't the same. I didn't feel this like movement in my spine.
Yeah.
And she moved away, so I didn't really have a chance to train with her. So I actually stopped being a member of the fitness center, which was a huge step for me. And because I found another yoga studio which was crazy expensive.
Oh.
So I didn't afford, I was a student at the time, so I didn't afford to have like both the fitness center and the yoga studio. And this studio was a hot yoga studio, which meant that I could do hot yoga all the time. And I became quite addicted to hot yoga.
Okay.
And I started doing it like I was doing kayaking when I was young. Maybe a little bit too over the top.
Yeah.
But there I found a group of people that I really loved hanging out with. And I started inviting all my friends to yoga, and I started doing hot yoga like 4 or 5 times per week. And this was really strong yoga, like you described, like vinyasa, you use your muscle. And I loved it so much. I became really strong and flexible, but I had a lot of pain. At this time I had tried, I was already an occupational therapist, I had tried to do that work, but it made me have more pain. So I started to study sociology as a next level in university. And I was still doing the hot yoga, and I was going to so much treatment. Like I would go to hot yoga and then I would go directly after that to massage or chiropractor, because when I was warm from hot yoga, they could move the spine, like they could really crack it, and it felt so good that someone was pushing right there where the joints had grown together. But I still had this mindset that was because I had pain. Like because I couldn't move, that was the reason for the pain. So I was not pain-free, and I was always trying to not have pain.
So what happened then?
Yeah, then there was one day I was back home in where I came from, in a small village, and I was with my current boyfriend at the time. All of a sudden I had what I today would call a flare-up.
Yeah.
I had a huge pain attack in my neck. I was not able to move at all, and we had to lie me down in the car. I couldn't move my head. I was sure that I had like a prolapse in my neck, and that now I was like in the risk of being paralyzed or something, because I could not move at all.
Wow. And how did you feel at that time?
I was screaming and crying, and I was so frustrated because I was doing all this yoga. I was really trying to find out what was wrong with me. I was eating healthy, like all these vegetables and green stuff, and I felt better in my body, so I didn't understand why this continued. And I felt it was so unfair.
Of course.
That I continued to be sick. And most of all, I was just really scared.
Yeah.
And I call it like disaster mind. It's like your mind start to find the solution for the problem, and it start to think about all the worst thing that could be wrong with you. But this experience made me realize I still have to do something, because I'm not healed.
Yeah.
And when we came back to Copenhagen, I took some rest, and I went to my physiotherapist at the time. And my physiotherapist was actually one of my oldest friends from kayaking.
Oh, wow.
And I had been in many other physiotherapy clinics, but in this clinic I went because he knew me for so long. And I had been feeling a little bit better all the time, but the pain was still there. This day I came back and I was crying so much. I think he's the only one who could tell me this at the time, but he looked me in the eyes and he said, "Your pain is not coming from your body." And I was very upset, actually.
Yeah.
But because I loved him and I knew him, I was like, okay, maybe he's right. I tried to understand what he was telling me.
Yeah.
And he told me to try to be open to the possibility that maybe something else was wrong. Like, that something else in my life was not good for me. And he still did the treatment. He gave me some acupuncture, some training, some massages. But when I came back from that session, I was crying so much. And it was like a release of something. I was so sad. I realized I have all this emotion bottled up inside.
Yeah. But how did you switch, back
The switch came
to the hope, to the, okay, I'm going to fight out of this, I'm going to find a solution.
Yeah, so that came from what he said, because I started to Google.
Yeah.
And I started to research, and I found online a lot about like explained pain therapy. And then I think it was like the next day or the day after, I saw like a flyer about explained pain therapy in Denmark.
Yeah.
And I called them up and I said, hey, I want to go. It was for physiotherapists. But I told him like, at this time I had become a yoga teacher in hot yoga. I was already a therapist. And I was like, please, can I come to this course? And they were like, yeah, you can come. I had to leave for another city. So I left there to do this course. And I didn't really know what I was walking into. I just wanted answers, like what is pain? Why do I have this huge pain all the time?
Yeah.
And I remember so clearly meeting these men, 2 men, talking for 8 hours about pain. And one of the first things they said was that pain is actually not coming from your body, that it's coming from your brain. And I just remember I was so provoked. I was like, what are they telling? They have never tried to have pain. I remember I was so angry with them. But then when the more we came into the course, I started to understand what they were saying. And they were explaining about how the pain creates a signal that is like a protective signal. And this is pain. And they explained how before what physiotherapists and doctors were taught, that pain came from the body to the brain. But actually it was the brain determining how much pain that was needed in order to protect the body. And once this knowledge was really in me and I really understood it, the pain was gone. And I remember it because we were sitting for 8 hours looking at a PowerPoint. And then I was staying at my friend's house at the time. I went home to her and we had a dinner. After dinner, I went up to do my yoga, which I would always do yoga in the night and in the morning. And I could move my head.
Wow.
I could move my spine. I could lift my arms. And I remember I was crying and I ran down to my friend and I'm like, I can lift my arms.
That's amazing.
It was really amazing. And when I came back to the course the day after, because it was 2 days, I told them I don't have pain anymore. And they were really happy for me and they asked in the group, I think we were 15 people, none of them had pain anymore.
Wow.
And the other people, they didn't have, so I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia and I was diagnosed with Sherman's disease and a lot of other chronic injuries that they said, the doctors, I would never heal from this.
Yeah.
And all the others, they had maybe like a new knee or old knee operation and no one had pain.
Yeah. And it's scary sometimes how, when it's someone who you trust, and you think that they're gonna give you the solution, and when they tell you, because I went for the same thing, where when I had my autoimmune disease that was diagnosed, and I was already in a super bad state, and I remember the doctor telling me it's just going to get worse and worse for the rest of your life. And that was so scary for me at that time, because I was already in such a horrible state and so much pain, and I couldn't live a normal life at that time, and so that gave me lots of despair. And to find finally a solution, without going the traditional way, and finding something that actually works, you're like, wow, all of a sudden you feel like this empowerment inside of you. And I imagine you went through the same thing at that time.
Completely the same thing.
Yeah.
And in pain therapy, we call this nocebo. It's like the negative effect from the treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And the negative effect, it usually comes from the communication.
Yeah.
I tell my clients, like, if the doctors is telling you this will take you 20 years to heal, then they can be sure to be right, because the brain sees an authority in front of it, and if the authority is telling that it will take 20 years, then the brain determines that that's how long time it will take.
Mm-hmm.
They underestimate how much power our brain and our nervous system has. Yeah. And once I understood the power of that, I started to look back at everything I've been through. And exactly like you, I was like, they've just been, all the people I've been in treatment with, they all took away my hope of ever getting better, because everyone told me you have to live with this for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Even from when I was 13, and the first time I went to the doctor and he said, yeah, you can't treat this, you have to train always, and you will probably have this kind of a back when you're old, where you can't move. So they take away the possibility of being healed, even without they know if it's possible.
Yeah.
And when you then heal, you're so happy, it's beyond imagination.
Yeah.
I remember the first time after the course of explained pain therapy, and I didn't have pain in my spine. The movement was different. I could do more with my body. It was the first time that I didn't have pain that I can remember. And I was in shock, really. I was like, can life be this good? Is it really possible? I thought everyone always had pain in the body.
Yeah.
I thought it was normal, because I forgot how it was. Maybe I never knew how it was not to have pain. And then later on I had to learn that pain is a part of life. So you will always have some problems, and it's normal. You can't always be like perfect. But I had a flare-up some time after the course. I started having pain again.
Yeah.
And then I contacted one of the trainers, and I started therapy with him. Okay. So I started training weekly, and we started doing explained pain therapy. And one of the things that we did is especially this, I had to write down everything that all the doctors and physiotherapists has ever told me about my healing. So everything they said, for example, a chiropractor, she once told me, all the hours you used in the kayak on leaning forward, you have to use as many hours you used on leaning forward to do training where you lean back, doing yoga and stretching. Wow. And I've been doing that since I was 13 until I was 18.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of years. And this was like imprinted in my brain.
Of course, yeah.
So I believed that was true. So me and my trainer, we talked about this, that she told me. We talked about, like, is that realistic? Why would it be like that? And we talked about a lot of things about, in society today, everyone says it's bad to sit with your back forwarded. Or you have to sit with a straight back. And since I was very young in school, they would always tell me to straighten your back. Look up, straighten your back. And I couldn't because my spine is different.
Yeah.
So every time I would do that, my brain would be trying to tell my muscle to do something that they couldn't actually do, so it will create pain.
Yeah.
Naturally, because it was a blocked signal in my spine.
Yeah.
So it was really interesting that I learned about all the things people had told me, how what they told me created a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last thing that I think really healed me was the understanding about the social situation of my life.
Yeah.
How that affected me so much.
Wow.
For many years, I had so much fear
Mm-hmm.
inside me.
Yeah.
And I did not know that I had that problem.
Mm-hmm.
But especially because I didn't always feel safe in my home where I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
And also after I lost my boyfriend and my father,
Yeah.
it created a lot of problems in my nervous system, and I did not deal with it. I just continued my education, I continued my training, and my brain and my nervous system was trying to tell me something.
Yeah.
And at the time, I talked with my therapist, and I realized it was a really bad situation that I had in my life. I actually grew up in something that was really difficult.
Yeah.
But I didn't see it like that, I just continued. Some people, maybe they react in different ways. They have depressions or anxiety or eating disorders or whatever we do to cope with a bad situation.
Yeah.
And
It was
for me-
overtraining.
For me, it was overtraining,
Yeah.
over pushing myself, and then my body trying to tell me like stop.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very common for people with chronic pain that they have this tendency to overwork.
Mm-hmm.
And they overwork and push themselves until the point where the body is so exhausted that you just have chronic pain, and the brain is trying to tell you like stop, and it's like giving you pain, and you just continue anyway, and the only thing the brain can really do is give you more pain.
Yeah.
Until you listen. So the thing I had to learn, which I still always have to balance, is how much training I can do so I don't have pain.
Mm-hmm.
I always have to find this balance.
Yeah.
And I think the elite sport gave me a lot of good things.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have a lot of discipline.
Yeah.
But sometimes I have maybe too much discipline. So it's about finding this balance. And the thing that I use is just a question. I ask myself, am I okay now?
Mm-hmm.
Like, am I actually injuring myself? And will I be okay later?
Wow.
And I ask that when I'm doing yoga, when I'm running, when I'm training. In the training, I'm asking myself this question.
And do you feel balanced now?
Sometimes, like, I don't have pain in this way anymore,
Mm-hmm.
but I still have to be mindful what I train and how much I train.
Mm-hmm.
And I still have this, I call it like the elite sport button. It's like there's a part of my brain, you can press it,
Mm-hmm.
and then I just go to full maximum of what I can do.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for me to actually use this energy with like we did in the temple, like really pushing ourselves.
Yeah, because that was very intensive. So that's what I was thinking. At that time, it must have been quite difficult for you actually, because we were always having to push ourselves so much.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember days where some of us, including you and I, we were just crying because we were just so exhausted. Our bodies couldn't. We were like screaming. We wanted to stop, and we still had like an hour left of training. Yeah.
I do remember actually. I think I had 2 days up there where these kind of thoughts about pain came back.
Yeah.
Where I was really afraid that now I will have pain again.
Yeah.
And it happens when when I push myself, it's usually okay.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's someone else pushing me, there's some part of me that gets really afraid.
Yeah.
Because it triggers this kind of fear that if I go too far,
Mm-hmm.
will I have pain again? And it also, I have, so there happens something in our brain when we have pain. It's like there's parts of the sensory nerves
Mm-hmm.
that is not functioning so well. And it means that we get used to move in a certain way, but there's some part that we never move it. Because it's like the brain shut it off, you can say.
Wow.
To protect you, to
Mhm.
not move. because it's like okay, you know when you walk into a room and then you accidentally hit your pinky toe.
Yeah.
and you're not injured, but it hurts a lot.
Yeah.
And the thing that happened is it's like your whole leg you can't feel the whole leg. It's like it collapses under you. Yeah? So it's like the same that the brain does. If you've had intensive pain one place, that the brain is trying to protect this place with intensive pain, at the same time the other muscles will start to be more relaxed and they won't function as well.
Oh, that's really interesting, actually.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's very complicated, the nervous system.
Yeah.
And this happens, I had chronic pain, severe chronic pain in the whole body. So there was many movements that I couldn't really do.
Yeah.
So whenever someone is pushing me, actually I can all of a sudden I can do something that I didn't think was possible. But it also triggered this part of my brain that's trying to protect me at the same time. So it's like one part of me wants to cry, but another part of me is excited because I could do something that I didn't thought was possible.
Yeah. Yeah, I know how you feel.
Can I give you a good example?
Yeah, go ahead.
This is not from the temple, but I was training, I don't know, we call it functional training. So I always like to do different kind of movement with my body. And I was going to functional training once a week in a training center where I was a yoga teacher. And then one day we were doing all the training outside. And one of the things we had to do was to jump up on a fence and then to walk on the fence, like just in a line, and jump back down. And I have always been very afraid of heights.
Yeah.
And I really, that day I had so much pain in my neck. I had a flare up, and I already told the trainer, like, I'm not sure I can do this. Like, I had been pain-free for 2 years, so I had a flare up, so I knew I had to find balance.
Yeah.
And he also knew. So when I walked up there on the fence, I was really afraid and crying.
Yeah.
And he walked to me and he gave me his hand. He lifted up and I could hold his hand as I was walking on the fence. And then it was okay. And then I would do all the other exercises, and then you had to do the fence again. So the first time he helped me, the second time he helped me, but the third time he wasn't there. And so I thought, okay, I'll just try to go up on the fence, and I stayed like on the fence waiting for him. But he didn't come, he was training with someone else. So I thought, okay, I can do this. I can breathe, and I'm just walking on a fence, and if I don't like it, I can just jump down. So I walk on the fence, and I start to feel really good. And then as I jumped down, I could see I could do it. And I was not working on my neck where I had the pain, but at the moment I jumped down, I start to cry so much. It was like a release.
Okay.
Because when I jumped down, the pain was gone.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was like, what? And I talked with the trainer afterwards, and he said, yeah, so your brain found out that there was nothing wrong in your body and you can do what you want to do. And then we discussed why I was having pain, like what else was going on in my life.
Yeah.
And at the time I was really stressed because I was giving up my normal job and starting my own business. So I was really in a stressful situation, and that's why my brain was protecting me with pain. Nothing was actually wrong in my body. But every time I forget that pain is not because there's something wrong in the body, I would go into this fear way of thinking. And this is still important for me today, to always be aware, because it's like a trigger for me, pain. Yeah. So it's always to stop. Okay, I have pain, and then I kind of talk with the pain, and I ask it what it wants, and I try to breathe and feel. And if that doesn't work, I do weird movements. Because usually weird slow movements releases whatever need to be released.
And how did you find these weird movements? How did you find out, I mean, that it was that could help you?
Yeah, it's from an old study from Australia. So I did different courses in explained pain therapy because when you find a method that heals you, you become really dedicated to that one method. So I started to do all these exercises from the method, and I started to help others also. So from the experience of my own body and also helping others, I developed a lot of movements.
Yeah.
But it's from a study where what you do is you do nerve stretching, and you move into the nerve tissue. And in order to do that, you have to go to the maximum limit of your ligaments, and then from there you move very slowly, like Tai Chi kind of movement actually, like really, really slow, because then the nerves has a chance to follow, and the brain has a chance to like send a signal there and also reach a signal back. And it's like if you have been standing in the middle of London for 5 years and didn't move, then when you have to move again, obviously London is different. So you have to move slowly in order to see which way to go. And it's the same if you haven't moved for a long time a specific part of your body, the brain needs some time to find out what is actually there.
Yeah.
So it's like you find new patterns, you create new nerve patterns. And to work with nerve, you have to work with what we call fascia, and also you have to work into the nerve tissue. So it's like you move really slowly, and then usually it's like I would stretch the arm out and I would stretch it back, and when I feel the stretch, I will stay there. And then I will start to just move really slowly into the stretch, maybe move my head opposite and stay there. And I usually add the breath as a detox effect as well.
And also you're used to it as a yoga teacher.
Yeah, so it looks like yoga, but I think that in yoga sometimes the intention is different than in pain therapy. Because in pain therapy I would sometimes push people more than I would do in yoga. In yoga it's more about energy and maybe having a nice sensation, but in pain therapy it's not necessarily the case. It can be to push you over the limit, like with the fence. Because when you go over the limit you will have the direct aha, like wow, I can do this. It's another example. I was having pain in my lower back from having done a lot of yoga. So it was okay to have pain in my lower back because I had been doing a lot of back bending.
Yeah.
And then I was in a course how to use explain pain therapy with heavy weightlifting. And I told the trainer at that time, I told him like, I have some lower back pain. And he said, okay, let's fix it. And what he had me do is rack pull, which is
what?
you put a weight in front of you and you grab around it and you lean forward and you lift it up.
Ah, okay, yeah, I see what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we would do rack pull, and I would start with 60 kilos, and he would teach me about like the technique, how to exactly stand so that you can lift a lot. And we worked from 60 kilo up.
Oh my goodness.
And
wow.
I ended up lifting 100 kilo.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Wow.
And at the time I was not weightlifting at all. And after that, actually I haven't had any lower back pain since then.
That's amazing.
But why? Not because something was wrong in my lower back, because my brain found out I have a strong body. And since that day, if I'm in doubt, I actually have this on video of me as a young yoga teacher lifting 100 kilo.
Wow.
Yeah, and every time if I think I'm weak, I'm like, no, I can lift 100 kilo.
You're not weak. Definitely not. You're definitely badass. Wow.
And I would do this with my clients as well. If they are convinced that they have a weak back, if I can teach them the correct technique and they can lift fast 100 kilo, the brain have to change the signal because it's like so surprised, okay, I actually am not weak, I'm strong. And it stops immediately to create the pain. It's like it changed your way of thinking right away. And that's why you want to go with explain pain therapy. You want to give people they experience that they can heal very fast. But sometimes when I have clients and they're not really into weightlifting and they more want to do yoga, we would do this kind of slow movements.
Okay.
But actually the rehabilitation with the slow movement is a little bit slower than if you can find one exercise really fast with a lot of weight. It will be more fast.
Okay.
But it depends on the person.
So basically, you've healed yourself with yoga, with this pain therapy courses that you had followed, with the training that these people helped you with, also eating healthier. Was there something else that you...
Yeah, actually, so I realized at one point I was doing all this yoga, and I became a yoga teacher in hot yoga because I loved it so much. But I found out that slowing down was something I never tried before. And we started having yin yoga in the yoga studio. I tried it once and I thought it was a complete waste of time.
And then you became a yin yoga teacher. That's really funny.
I really hated it. Like really. But it was again the same as the first time I went to yoga. Because after I felt better.
Yeah.
And I realized, because then I tried it again, and I realized when I was doing yin yoga, I had the chance to guess this kind of movement where you stretch, right?
Yeah.
I had the chance to go into my pain and stay with it and let it go slowly.
Wow.
So I find a way to do things also slowly. And after I became a yoga teacher, I had an injury in my shoulder from doing too much chaturanga, which is like this low plank.
Okay. Oof, that's torture.
Yeah, I had been doing too much of this low planking vinyasa yoga. And I started doing yin yoga. And I found a woman teaching in Copenhagen, and she was doing this course where you had to do yin yoga every day. And I thought, why not? Let me try it. And that really helped a lot. I was still, like, this is back in the time, I was still having pain, but I loved it in my body. And it started changing me a lot. So I went to Singapore 3 times actually to take teacher trainings with a teacher. He's called Victor Cheng. And I started to learn a lot about Chinese medicine. I started to learn about what we call the 5-element theory, about food, about how to detox your body, how to have a healthy diet, how to have a healthy digestion. And I started to be very interested in healing. But this again, it came from my own experience with yoga, and I started to use this kind of yoga, yin yoga, as a treatment. So I started to understand that if I do this pose, it's like healing my liver. And if I do this pose, I start to heal my stomach. And for me this was really interesting, and I started to do every day this yin yoga practice. It's called Asian Yin. And we learned a lot about the yin and the yang and Taoism, and I was really interested in this. I felt something like a calling. So this helped me a lot also to start to change my diet. And I started to be vegan. At the time I was eating sometimes fish, and I would also sometimes eat cheese. But my teacher, my yoga teacher in Singapore, he said, no, it's actually not good for you when you have a spine problem to eat eggs and to eat cheese. Because the spine here is very connected with the liver. And the liver, when the liver have a problem when you're young, it will start to give you problems in the middle of the spine. This is something you know from Chinese medicine, but again, a Western doctor would never say that.
Of course, yeah.
And this, when the liver is weak, will affect also your digestion. And it all came at the same time. So I started being fully vegan, and I felt so much better. I had so much energy, and I was not tired all the time. I lost a lot of weight in the beginning because my body had to adjust to a new kind of diet. But after I think about 3 or 4 months, I started to gain weight again, only eating mainly rice and vegetables. And I loved everything about like Chinese food and Asian food and all these kind of dishes. Especially I started to cook from a TCM book, like Chinese traditional medicine food.
Yeah.
And I always would focus on the stomach and spleen, because when the stomach and spleen is balanced, then it affects better all the other organs. And this really changed my life.
I think it's really interesting with nutrition is that, so you find all these different information with different types of diets, and you can see that, as I said before, every body that we have is different. Like you healed with vegan food, I healed with more like paleo, traditional type of food. And when I started studying nutrition, I found lots of common points that really helped, which was like taking out the processed foods, which we have in common normally if you want to eat in a healthy way, taking out white sugar, and then eating lots of vegetables. That's really important because it's going to bring you the nutrients to have energy to be able to prepare your body. And I think it's interesting when you can try different ways and see what is good for your body at that moment, and then you can little by little seeing how your body develops, how it heals, try different diets and see at what moment in your life what is best for you.
For sure, I think it's changing a lot. And even for a long time I was eating vegan, and I loved it a lot, but I still had some stomach problems sometimes. So I never eat gluten, for example. Gluten would always trigger my intestines.
Yeah.
And when we arrived in the temple, I don't know if you remember, but I told our Shifu that I had a problem with gluten. And he said, very easy to heal.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, I haven't eaten gluten for 6 years, but okay. And the only thing he did is he took my noodles and he talked to my noodles. He gave it like a spell or something. And he looked at me and he gave me the noodle and he said, now you can eat gluten. And I eat it and I didn't have a problem. And I started to eat these noodles every day. And then one day I went to Shifu. I said, Shifu, how did you heal me from gluten intolerance? And he looked at me and said, I didn't. And I was like, what? You did. And I say, but how did I heal myself from this problem? He say, when something is no longer a problem, it's no longer a problem. And I felt like, wow, it's just the same as with the pain. That if my brain determines that this is a danger, it will give me a problem in order to stop eating it.
Well, actually, I think you can look at it with different perspectives. That is like one that you can clearly see. And then remember when I was telling you in our last podcast, how for me, for a long time, I couldn't, and I needed to repair my body, and then I could reintroduce it. It's not something I actually do like because I do feel heavier and stuff like that. But I tolerate it much better than what I used to, and I think that's because I worked so many years on healing my body. Like even a few years back, and also I worked on my state of mind because I had healed a lot, and then I had decided that I wanted to try out the university because I had done mental coaching classes, and then I wanted to mix it up with psychology, so I tried out the psychology courses. And I was so stressed because it wasn't at all what I was expecting. It was very different. And I remember I had lots of flare-ups during that time, and it's because my state of mind was not good that I started feeling bad again. And I just think that you're afterwards you see, like, I started healing myself again. I stopped the courses to do something else that I enjoyed, and I healed again. And I healed enough so that things that weren't good for me got good again. But like even at that time, I had healed for a couple years, and because my state of mind wasn't good, and I was creating the stress in the body, I could not tolerate much. You see, because I had put
That makes sense also, that the times that I tried to introduce gluten, I had been in Denmark. And it's not that there's something wrong with Denmark, but it's a place where I'm usually very stressed out. And in the temple in China, I was not stressed out. I was
Exactly.
going through a lot, but I was not stressed out in this way.
Yeah, that's where I wanted to come to.
Yeah.
That sometimes if you get to a state where your state of mind is good, your body has been healing, then, you know, your body can tolerate much more than what it, you know, could before.
Yeah.
And that's what, I mean, I felt happen. Like, I was healing, but then I was in a bad state, so when I did try to gluten at that time, it did not go well with me. And then I healed it for a couple more years, and there I was in a good state of mind. My body was really healthy because I really took, well, you know, good care of it. And then when I did try gluten, it passed this time.
I think you're right.
So I think there could be like different solutions to what could have happened, but this could have been maybe one of them.
Yeah, definitely, because since the temple, I'm in a better state of mind.
Yeah.
Like, I'm more relaxed and less stressed, definitely. And I have been able to eat more freely what I want without having problems. For me, veganism has become a part of me also. Like, it's part of my ethics.
Mm-hmm.
So I prefer eating vegan, but I see now I can eat what I want to eat, and also bread, which is nice. Mm-hmm. It's a nice thing to be able to eat bread sometimes.
Well, especially when you're in a country where they eat a lot of it.
Yeah, right now in Nepal we have to eat bread, right? Otherwise we wouldn't have a lot of food.
No, unfortunately, it's not what I would choose to eat normally. But yeah, especially that we have like just certain options, and it's not like we can cook for ourselves where we're at, so. We can't like go to the market to pick up some veggies or anything, but
for now at least we can't.
We deal with the way we can, but at least our bodies are well enough to handle the diet that we're having now, which I'm very glad about because we can't leave here.
No, but I really feel like the training, like doing a lot of yoga, doing a lot of tai chi, doing a lot of qigong is helping me a lot.
Qigong,
yeah.
So this was quite a journey you had, and so you said all the elements I think that really did help you heal. Again, it was the yoga, the pain therapy, the nutrition as well, the state of mind, all that really helped, and now you're actually helping people with this.
Yeah, I've had clients in pain therapy for more than 3 years now.
Yeah.
And I have clients like in person and online as well. And it's really amazing to see the transformation each time. I think if I should just say one example, it was this woman. She contacted me because she had a depression. She had lost her husband and she was not able to move. She had so much pain in her knees, and she had a dog and she needed to walk the dog. And she had found me on Facebook, and she called me, and she came to the place where I was living at the time. And to begin with, I just heard her story, like we talked about her life. And then I asked her to move because I thought, let's see those knees, right? Yeah. She had some trouble coming up the stairs, so I had seen that she had pain. When she did a squat, I just asked her to do one normal squatting. It was such a huge noise in her knees that I thought it was the floor.
Whoa.
And I understood that she was afraid to move her knees because it was making such a huge sound.
Yeah.
I was, and I have to not give her fear, so I was like, oh yeah, that's a big sound. And not making any face.
Yeah, of course.
And I told her like to do it again, but this time I just gave her the option to move her feet out to the side, to do it wider, and then I wanted her to make a heart shape with her hands and look through the heart. Okay. And as she was going down, to think about love. And love for her was her daughter. And I told her to just do a squat as she was thinking about her daughter, looking through the heart. And then as she was going down, I said, okay, now you spell Copenhagen from back. And she was so confused, and all of a sudden she was really low. Yeah. And as she was down there, she started to cry. And I told her, okay, now you just slowly come up and come back to sitting. And she cried for a long time, and she looked at me and she was like, I have never been able to go so low for the past 20 years.
Wow, that's amazing.
And then we talked about her life, and again she did the squat.
Yeah.
And this time the sound was less, and she was not afraid.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't have any pain. And the last time we did it, she could do it freely without any pain. There was still the sound, but she didn't have pain. She could walk down the stairs after the session.
Yeah.
That for me was like amazing. I met with her 2 times more,
Mm-hmm.
and gradually she just felt better, and she knew exactly what to do. And it's not about me. It's like this way, this method really works for people who have chronic pain.
Yeah.
Because when you have chronic pain, there are certain mechanisms that happen in the brain. And when you start to focus on that, it's more like cognition. When you focus on the cognition together with movement, it really works. Yeah, so now she can walk her dog, and she found balance and peace in her life.
Yeah.
And for me, that's what it's all about. With other clients, it's more about finding also diet. Sometimes I help them with that. Usually I also give them yoga sequences so that they can do yoga at home. Because for me, yoga really helped me a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And most people, they find me because they're ready. And I have a lot of studies, so I'm also a sociologist, and I'm also a big nerd. So for a long time I studied the connection between yoga and pain.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of studies that show that yoga and meditation is the most effective method to heal pain.
Yeah.
So I use those studies in my yoga classes, but also with my clients.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So this is really amazing. And actually, I was thinking that we both also went through a lot of healing when we were at the temple with traditional Chinese medicine.
Yeah.
But not with chronic pain, but with other problems. And I was thinking that if listeners would be interested, we could actually do a podcast about that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That could be really interesting.
Yeah.
For me, I healed a huge scar in my head.
Exactly. Yeah.
And for you...
So for me, I still had some chronic fatigue left that hadn't completely disappeared, and that's why I was really afraid of the training. And with a mixing of different herbs and some special training exercises, our teacher really helped me out with that.
Yeah.
So maybe we could do something about that as well. If you guys are interested, put in the commentaries.
Yeah, let us know if you guys are interested. We would love to talk about our healing journey in China.
Yeah, exactly. So this was really great, and thank you for being here and answering all these questions. And thank you guys for listening, and hope we'll see you guys soon.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Hug.